I think what I love about every time I come to India and I meet all the fintech founders out there is you guys are building deep tech, right? You're solving real problems and you're solving them at scale, right? And I think that combination of those three things is what I guess everywhere else we need in the world.
There is no one else to copy, there is no one else to follow. So we are going to be creating new solutions, and that actually drives us. And at the same time, we are not averse to making mistakes. We know that if you do 10 new things, you may fail in two. So we also have this joke in the organization that if at all need to, we will be fixing a moving train. The train cannot stop because there are a lot of people all across the world who are looking at how NPCI has evolved into such a credible and dominant network. And a lot of other networks are seeking inspirations. So it's the right time for us to create a subsidiary that is foreign focused.
Joining me all the way from Mumbai is a good friend and a payments expert, a payments guru. His name is Ritesh Shukla. He's the CEO of NPCI International. How do you stop yourself from being complacent?
We are open to working with different partners. Our only intent is to solve for the consumers from India or Indians living outside India. And we will be happy to work with anyone who's willing to work with us and at the same time has the muscle power or the market power to make it happen. So we are pretty flexible and fluid in that space.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Couchonomics with Arjun. Joining me all the way from Mumbai is a good friend and a payments expert, a payments guru. His name is Ritesh Shukla. He's the CEO of NPCI International. And we will get into NPCI in a lot more length. But before we do that, Ritesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arjun. It's a real honor and privilege to be with you. I've personally heard so many of your podcasts and learned from them. So I hope to add value. Looking forward to the opportunity.
No, I have no doubt you will add value, and thank you for tuning into the episodes. Firstly, before we start, Ritesh, I must congratulate you. I think NPCI and the other organizers behind GFF this year, the Global FinTech Festival, put together an awesome show. Right? It was just 3 days of I guess fintech on hormones, if I may use that term. I think there was so much activity, there was so much interaction that I think was brilliant. So well done. I think in 5 years you guys have come a long way, and obviously with the Prime Minister of India there on the last day and his keynote speech was a great endorsement to the show. So congratulations to you and the wider team on putting the show together.
Thank you, Arjun. I think GFF is something very, very close to our heart, and the participants, like you said, from central bankers to fintech all across the world, were there, and it was a great, if I can use the word Mahakumbh of fintechs, and of course your presence added to the glamour and content of it. So thank you.
Excellent. So before we get into NPCI and UPI and specifically what you guys are trying to sort of tackle, let me just ask you a question from a payment practitioner's perspective, right? There's a lot going on in the payments world, right? From your perspective, what are the 3 or 4 things that you see defining the landscape or actually changing the landscape in the foreseeable future?
So I think let me start by talking about telcos and the internet penetration that's growing. And this is an area that often doesn't get spoken about. So close home, if you look at India, we have 1.2 billion, mobile connections, almost 700 million and growing smartphones. Internet is one of the cheapest in the world. I think $17 cents to a GB, and a very young population. And so is what is happening in the entire developing world. So I think this, if you just only look at this aspect, it's going to create a lot of value. And that's where, you will see a lot of digital payments, mobile-based payments, that kind of solutions evolving on consumer as well as on the merchant and business side. So I think that's a very, very important area. And we have seen it happen here, and we are confident it's going to happen all across the world in the same format.
And do you want to plug in for faster payments, the growth in real-time payments? Because that has been a phenomenal story over the last few years.
No, absolutely. And just if you layer what I talked about with the agile solutions or the simple solutions that fintechs are creating in India and globally, even Middle East, there are a lot of exciting fintechs that have come up. They are going and filling in the gaps. They are going and filling in the gaps that exist and are identified. And I think consumer is at the center of all these things that are happening, which is a great sign in terms of not only bringing down the cost but also making things more efficient, accessible. So I think exciting times ahead for the payments in general.
Okay, so Ritesh, let's take a step back. Obviously, my audience is diverse. We have a lot of people from the Middle East, Central Asia, even far, even into Europe. For the audience, please tell us, what is NPCI? What is NPCI International? What are some of your marquee offerings in the market, so that people get a better understanding of the organization that you are working with?
So NPCI is National Payment Corporation of India. We are a 17-year-old company. We came into existence in 2008. When we started, we were owned or kind of by 10 founding members, 10 big banks from India, state-owned banks, foreign banks, and private banks. But as of now, we are kind of owned by 65 entities. And in the last expansion that we did in December of 2020, we also have fintechs like, PhonePe, Paytm, Sodexo, Hitachi Payments, Amazon. They are also owners of NPCI. And we run a multi-rail network in India. We are operators of UPI. We are operators of RuPay cards. We have bill payment platforms. We have a clearing house, and we operate highway automation systems. So there are plenty of systems we operate, and we have built all these solutions in-house indigenously in India. And now the organization that I represent, NPCI International, is all about taking these solutions, these possibilities to international markets, because there are a lot of people all across the world who are looking at how NPCI has evolved into such a credible and dominant network, and a lot of other networks are seeking inspirations. So it's the right time for us to create a subsidiary that is foreign focused, and we are engaging with countries across the world to kind of share our experiences, share our learnings, and inspire them. And the whole concept is about, why should one reinvent the wheel? If we have done something here in India, we are happy to share with any other aspiring network in the world, making them sovereign, making them, uh, work out their or enable their national agenda and displace cash. So that's the journey of NPCI, and it's been a super successful initiative, a brainchild of Reserve Bank of India, and well supported by Indian Banking Association.
No, and I think it is, and I think you hit the nail, which is that the ecosystems come together, right? The brainchild of RBI, supported by banks of all types. You then have fintechs, which are privately owned, who are actually providing the last mile access, or the point of interaction access. Let's specifically talk about UPI. I think last time I read, the numbers were somewhere around 500 million transactions being processed every day. I might be off by a few numbers, but it's huge. The number is just it's massive. Yeah. Now, you alluded to at the start of the conversation that a lot of it has to do with the payments world changing on the back of smartphones, internet availability. But what were the other factors that you believe have led to UPI being such a juggernaut of success in India?
I think that's a great question. Thank you for it, Arjun. So if I have to call out few specifics around, factors that made UPI what it is today, I think to start with, the most important one would be UPI's alignment with the national agenda. So India as a country is aspiring to be a developed country by 2047, and we are looking at including more and more people. It's a stated agenda by the government of India. And UPI finds its place right in there. So alignment with national agenda, I think it's very important. Then we have a very progressive regulator in India. So RBI, is always looking out for consumer interest, and at the same time ensuring that evolving technologies are well grounded, and they are serving the consumer interest in the best possible manner. So you have alignment with national agenda, you have support from the regulator, and I think we also have found a great way of deriving collaboration from the ecosystem. And you did touch upon it, so if you look at success of UPI, it's also a lot of credit goes to fintechs and banks in India, because they have come to the fore, and they are reaching the last mile of consumers. Even during pandemic, when everything was locked down, there were fintechs in India who were going to villages and ensuring that every merchant, or even smallest of the business, is able to accept payments digitally. And we are sitting at the center, so we see, so fintechs, I think, a great role played by them in evolution of UPI in India, be it use cases, be it innovative solutions such as VoiceBox. So VoiceBox is an interesting technology here, which actually is nothing but a speaker connected to your QR code. So every time you receive money, speaker announces that 50 rupees or 100 rupees received. Now imagine if a small tea vendor, and in India, and especially in Mumbai, we do consume a lot of tea, and we call it special cutting chai. So if a vendor is selling, let's say, serving 50 customers in a minute, and if he is counting cash and accounting for it, and also his average handling time, it's a popular term in QSR, quick service restaurant category, average handling time, so that is pretty high. But if you replace that cash thing with something like UPI, and a consumer scans the QR and the speaker announces 50 rupees received in bank account, so imagine how efficient we have made that small tea seller. And so this is one such example. So there are beautiful stories all across. So in addition to the fintech space, and then the whole user experience that has been curated on different UPI apps is standardized. It's very intuitive. It's simple to use. We offer it in multiple languages so everybody can understand. You won't believe the way even senior citizens, people of older generation, have logged onto UPI and they love it. So simple. User interface, multiple languages, made for feature phone, smartphone, and also at the same time pretty much safe and secure. So for every transaction, you got to put your PIN. There is a proper device binding, sorry, mechanism that is instituted in place. These are factors, and on top of that, what I mentioned earlier, the telcos, the vast coverage that India today enjoys, thanks to the silent telco revolution. So all these factors put together, I think, have created, UPI, which is very, very core to the way we pay here in India. About 75 to 80% of the digital payments today in India happen on UPI. And I think these factors are probably the drivers behind the success.
So let me ask a question, right? And this prompts a question. You talked about very interesting elements. You talked about people running tea stalls, right, which is a segment of customers. You talked about the slightly call it the silver economy, right? The slightly older generation, right? The growth juggernaut, I think, is there's too much momentum, right? So you guys are going to continue growing. I think the momentum's behind you. You've got you've got the fintechs, you've got the banks all supporting you. How do you guys stop being complacent? Because when there is so much success to be enjoyed, so much growth to be seen, right? How do you stop yourself from being complacent? And I'm not suggesting you are, because when I was at GFF, one of the most interesting reports or initiatives that was launched was, I think, UPI for Her, right? Where I think you guys have taken, there's a focus on 200 million women who are either sole entrepreneurs or are not yet in the digital economy, and you're focusing. So how do you guys make sure that you're constantly reinventing yourself?
Please don't take me wrong, but I don't see it happening anytime in near future. I think it's in the DNA of the organization, the energy, the agility, the innovative streak. Dilip, who's our managing director for NPCI Group, he often talks about it, and the belief that we have is, see, we are at the forefront of it, right? There is no one else to copy. There is no one else to follow. So we are going to be creating new solutions, and that actually makes us that actually drives us. And at the same time, we are not averse to making mistakes. We know that if you do 10 new things, you may fail in two. So we also have this joke in the organization that we are if at all need to, we will be fixing a moving train. The train cannot stop. So that's our approach to it. And if you see the evolution of UPI, various interesting solutions or use cases have been launched. We launched UPI Circle, which is delegated payments.
Ritesh, faster payments is becoming a global phenomenon, right? Nearly every country in the world is either launching their own faster payments infrastructure or is thinking about it. Where does, in this global context, NPCI International sit?
So, Arjun, there are two broad areas that we are pursuing when we are looking at possibilities outside with the rest of the world. One is infrastructure build, and the other is interoperability. Infrastructure build is actually empowering other countries to create payment platforms that are aligned to their domestic needs, that make them sovereign, and that also give them access to the best in class technologies or solutions or use cases that are emerging out of India on UPI platform today. So that's one part. And the other payment networks, we've been meeting them, and they all, I think, look up to the way NPCI has positioned itself, evolved itself in the country. So there's lots to be exchanged, and I think we can only grow stronger if we collaborate, because we don't compete. We are, sister networks, and we can only flourish by collaborating to serve our people better in a sovereign manner. So that's one area. The other is interoperability. So we are building, rails with the other countries where there are existing flows to serve P2P and P2M transactions. And this is where I think you are aware, and it's in public domain. We are also looking at a possibility of connecting UPI with ANI in due course of time. That will happen. So just imagine somebody sitting in UAE and being able to send money to India using a combination of UPI, ANI, by way of proxy. Within 15-20 seconds, the money hits here, and similarly from here the money hits in their bank account in 15-20 seconds, and all aligned with the RBI's Vision 2030 document of speed in transactions, access to everyone, transparency, and better cost dynamics. So that's what we are looking at doing, and we have made the fair amount of success in last 4 years. We have four opportunities on the infrastructure build side that are in public domain, and there are many more in pipeline, which I will not be able to divulge because of the reasons I'm sure you're aware. On interoperability front, we are live in 7 countries, and we are looking at going live in many other countries. So we are following the existing flows where Indians travel or where Indians live, for P2P and P2M transactions. So we have done that. Now, going forward, I think there are three broad areas that we are going to be focusing on when it comes to interoperability. One is some of these rails that we have built are best kept secret, so it's important for travelers to know that when you go outside India, your UPI apps or they will work efficiently. So we have to invest in marketing, which we are doing. We have to also invest a lot on the consumer side, so that the same safety security measures are kind of adapted by consumers. And the third is merchant or cashier side, branding, training, and all these. So these are some of the areas that we have achieved, and these are some of the areas that we'll focus going forward.
So let's take interoperability as a question, right? Now, this is a topic of discussion on every forum that I've ever attended in the last 2 years, right? So I hear you that you're looking at 7 sort of interoperability opportunities, or actually you've solved for it with 7 countries, but I'm assuming these are bilateral relationships between NPCI and whatever the player is on this side of the world. There's a very interesting project or initiative under the BIS's, I guess, umbrella, which is called Project Nexus, right? Which is actually looking at multilateral interoperability with faster payments as the default mechanism. What are your thoughts on the vision of Nexus? Because I appreciate the vision, because it's about solving for complexity which will come with bilateral interoperability. How possible do you see that happening, at least in the world that we live in? Do you really think it's going to capture the imagination of all the various regulators and infrastructure providers? Or do you think it's a bit of a push?
No, so like you said, the current countries that we have gone live are more bilateral, but we are not averse to multilateral. And Reserve Bank of India is one of the signatories to Project Nexus. I think there are 5 countries, and RBI is one. 5 central banks and RBI is one. So that shows that we are positive about multilateral possibilities as well, because there is so much to achieve. And
if you keep consumer needs, consumer interest, consumer protection in mind, I think the answer is there. I mean, we have to create options, and whatever works for consumers, they will latch on to it. So we are excited about Nexus as well. And see, anything that is aligned to the agenda of bringing down the cost, ensuring there is access to everyone, and there is transparency in transaction, and there is speed in executing the transactions. I think we are game for various possibilities as long as they are aligned to our core aspirations.
Okay, and that fosters two other questions for me, which are interesting, and I want to capture your view on it. If you take the part of the world I'm actually calling you in from, let's just take the wider wider GCC, right? We've been very, very quick at adopting digital payments, right? We've done a fairly decent job in terms of digital payment adoption for a number of reasons, like young population, smartphone penetration, internet, et cetera, right? Having said that, faster payments has not really become a part of our DNA, our fabric of the way we make our payments right now, right? Whether it's the UAE, whether it's KSA, and some of the other countries. Your thoughts on that? Again, I don't want to compare and contrast India with these parts of the world. They're completely different markets, completely different dynamics. How do you see faster payments becoming a more integral part of the payment ecosystem of this part of the world?
So I like to say two things here. One is, I think still early days, for faster payments in that region, and Ani got launched I think in October last year. So it's early days, and I'm aware team is putting a lot of hard work, and I do see a lot of runway for Ani as a solution in UAE. But purely talking from India perspective, I think one of the biggest use case for us would be to ensure we connect these faster payments that are evolving in different countries in GCC with UPI. I think there are about 9 million people from India who are working in different countries in GCC, and that's a significant chunk. If by bridging the fast payment systems here with the fast payment systems there, if we can support this cross-border flows, be it P2P or P2M, we will create a lot of value. Is what I truly believe, and this is going to add a lot of excitement for the banks as well, because this will unlock a new use case which traditionally I don't think they've been serving as much.
No, they haven't. And actually, as a matter of fact, banks have been losing shares on cross-border payments, specifically cross-border remittance, if I may use that term, over the years, because it's not a segment that they've actually gone and targeted specifically, and they haven't bespoke services. Another question which came up, and actually you answered it quite eloquently during GFF, but just for the sake of the audience here, there's obviously a lot of conversation around the emergence of digital currencies, CBDCs specifically. Obviously, one of the use cases is cross-border usage. Where is UPI's or NPCI International stand on the emergence of new form factors such as CBDCs?
So, first of all, I think we all need to acknowledge that CBDC is a form of money, and often people confuse CBDC with fast payment platform. I think fast payment platform is a way of moving money. CBDC is a form of money, and as you see in India, RBI is running a pilot here for CBDC in India. It's a beautiful interface. I have used it personally. And in a country like India, you need options, right? And offline CBDC for retail has great use cases. So though I'm not an expert, I think people who are running it will be able to answer it much more effectively. But when you talk of UPI as a platform, today we are connected to different funding sources, or one user can connect to different funding sources, be it a savings or a checking account or a RuPay credit card or a wallet. The platform UPI is ready for CBDC also, as and when Reserve Bank of India allows here. CBDC can also be mapped as funding source, and UPI as a platform can be used for moving money from one person, CBDC from one person to the other. So UPI is ready for CBDC as and when it happens, of course, with regulator approval here in India.
And I think that's very essential, right? I think it's very essential that people actually understand the difference between form of money and the infrastructure of the rails that actually move, because we'll find, there'll be new forms of money in the future, right? New variants which will come across. And the fact that you can actually use common rails to drive this around actually solves for some of the interoperability issues, because at least that what I see from a number of players who have entered payments from a digital asset space is they're building closed loop networks themselves, right? They keep talking about interoperability. We're building it on multi-rail interoperability. I guess they say we're compliant to multi-rail principles, but the reality is they're building a lot of closed loop systems. Let's come to infrastructure for a while, right? So you said you've actually signed some significant deals, right? Some notable international deals. Are you at liberty to share a few of these? Obviously, they're in public domain, but in terms of how significant these deals are, how they're actually evolving, what's been the story behind these?
So, Arjun, any infrastructure opportunity, I think, has a gestation period of 3 to 4 years. And today we have four in public domain. Two are for the domestic card scheme, card space. Two are in card space, UAE and Mauritius. And in UAE, we have developed deep collaboration with the Al Ittihad Payments team under guidance from CBUAE leadership. And we are proud of that association. India and UAE have always had historic ties. We have very, very strong relationship. So we are working with the AAP team in terms of ensuring that Jaivan card becomes a successful proposition made in Emirates for Emiratis and for people who are living there, and makes them happy and proud every time they flash it. Similarly, on instant payments, two noteworthy partnerships that are in public domain are Peru and Namibia. Peru is a large economy in South America. So there we are collaborating with Central Bank of Peru in terms of helping them create a sovereign instant payment or fast payment platform that drives interoperability. Because there are closed loop systems that are there, but if you look at UPI, once it makes entry in there in a fashion that they want, then it is aimed to bring interoperability. It is aimed to make the country sovereign, and it's a big country. People are living, and like India, Peru has also significant amount of people living in rural areas. So if you create something like UPI, then you are able to democratize payments. You are able to drive cash displacement to the last person in the value chain. And if you look at success of UPI, 65% of Indians live in villages. And before UPI, cards were only concentrated in top 8-10 cities, and cash was king everywhere. But with UPI, it has gone to the villages. It has really created a lot of value for smallest of the business operator or normal person in India. So we are looking to replicate these successes in different markets, and create a digital public good of the world.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, which was, I guess it came up in GFF a number of times, right? And it goes in this direction that UPI and NPCI have become so powerful, they've become so big that they can solve for all the problems of or most of the problems of the nation, right? And so therefore, fintechs are actually not getting the opportunities, or startups are not getting an opportunity to come in and with disruptive ideas and for solving these problems, right? I see it slightly differently, and you can correct me if I see this differently. I see it from a perspective, whether it is with UPI, whether it is with the new unified lending interface ULI, is, in my humble opinion, you guys are building the base layer, right? And you're actually encouraging fintechs and innovators and startups to come and innovate on top of that layer by coming up with sort of different solutions and so on and so forth, right? Firstly, I don't know, how do you respond to the rhetoric that NPCI is a juggernaut? It's kind of taken away the opportunity for innovators to innovate. One. Second part of your question is, I'm assuming you're seeing an increasing amount of fintechs, and I don't mean just the phone pays and the Paytms, the big ones. I'm talking about even smaller fintechs which are innovating around. Are you seeing a lot of these coming around? Secondly, how are you encouraging, incubating, and accelerating these fintechs to actually innovate on top of UPI?
So I think that there was That question had many aspects to it. I'll try to answer it. Please pardon me if my answer is wrong, is long, not wrong. So, if you look at UPI, I think you'll have to take a step back and look at the whole DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure of India. And it has many layers, right? It has an identity layer which is served by Aadhaar. Aadhaar has 1.4 billion people who are enrolled in it, and everybody has their biometrics there. It serves great purpose. You can digitally, authenticate yourself, and it is in a way aiding to development in India. So that's the identity layer. Then there is payment layer, which is where we are sitting NPCI, different solutions from NPCI. Then the third layer is data exchange layer, where there is various solutions that are today being launched. So if you look at the payment layer, I think it is part of the overall design for the country that what UPI and NPCI products are playing. So it is by design that the role that we are playing. And when I say by design, it is something that is being conceptualized, encouraged, and sometimes conceived by Reserve Bank of India and other authorities. So we are executing the vision or the mandate that is being developed for India as a country. So if anybody says NPCI is blocking fintechs, I think that's not correct factually. In fact, NPCI is a fintech, right? We are a fintech, and we operate like a fintech. We kind of work like a fintech, and we collaborate like a fintech in all aspects, you can say. And we have great collaboration with the other service third party apps, or any uh, area you can imagine. A lot of fintechs in India have actually created their solutions, be it on the consumer side or on the merchant side, on top of UPI. And you look at, for example, Google Pay. Google Pay is a super success here in India. And they have played an important role in making what UPI today is. But at the same time, Google Pay success can also be attributed to UPI, and Phone Pay is another example. So some of these fintechs, have actually created their solutions on top of UPI, and we have an very promising future in the area of digital payments because of the collaboration that we have. So that's what I would say. I hope I answered your question.
No, I think you did, and I think that is my view too. And my view has been quite, vocally that while you are a fintech, and yes, you are an incredibly well-funded and a well-backed fintech in all intensive purposes, you are, you can either take that lens and say, oh, this is a monopoly. But actually, I don't see it that way. I personally think that you're providing the base infrastructure, which actually, in a lot of ways, de-risks fintechs to be able to innovate, because there is a certain amount of assurance that the underlying infrastructure delivers, right? Which is actually one of the biggest risks that a fintech might have when they go to innovate. I think there is tremendous opportunities, across that chain, or that flow of money, if I may use that term, where people can inject themselves with solutions, which I'm assuming you guys are very open to integrating with, because those solutions can be sold to end customers and entities and so on and so forth. So I do fundamentally believe that you I think you're creating an ecosystem which will actually unlock and unleash a whole range of fintechs on it. Just moving on from that to I guess internationally. And apologies if this is a foolish question, but I do need to ask this. Is while you are working with, I guess, national payment infrastructure players in every market, and I'm aware of it because I'm somehow part of the conversations because of the job that I do in the whether it's Al Ittihad payments or actually the conversations you're having with other GCC nations. Are you also having conversations with people who are in the, if I may say, the private payment sector? Right, because there are a number of large acceptance players in the market. There are a number of other payment players in the market. There are telcos that are getting into payments and so on and so forth. So what's the nature of conversations that you're having as NPCI International with some of these big players who have cross-border payments, whether it's P2P and P2M as a part of their story? Is it always through the national payment infrastructure, or are you directly reaching out to these players and talking to them too?
So Arjun, our market strategy is driven by the realities of a particular market. While in our current part, in the part of the world that we are today, there are national switches, there are national networks, but in some markets there aren't any, right? So if there aren't any networks like NPCI or Al Ittihad payments or Saudi payments, then what do? You kind of reach out to players who are who can make it for you. So, for example, we are talking to big merchant aggregators in Europe. One of our partner, Lyra Networks, is a private entity, and they have enabled UPI's acceptance on the Eiffel Tower website. In fact, last week I was in France and I was able to use UPI for a transaction at Galeries Lafayette at their marquee store. So we are, open to different working with different partners. Uh, our only intent is to solve for the consumers from India or Indians living outside India, and we will be happy to work with anyone who's willing to work with us, and at the same time has the muscle power or the market power to make it happen. So we are pretty flexible and fluid in that space.
So that's interesting. So that's only from a connectivity and an interoperability perspective, or also infrastructure?
So infrastructure, I think, to do something like UPI, I don't think private players can make it happen, because then it'll end up being a closed loop system. For you to create something like UPI, which is interoperable, which is democratizing payments, which is leading to citizen welfare, displacing cash, you need a regulator or national switch on the other side. Otherwise, in my personal view, I may be wrong, but I don't think it's going to take off if private players are assigned with the task of creating something like UPI and running with. They will never be on the same page, because there'll be conflicting interests, there'll be conflicting or desires, be it profitability, market share, or whatever.
My question, Ritesh, was not to create a UPI, but was to say that you guys have created arguably the best sort of faster payments infrastructure, right? And there could be a private sector player who basically says, we want to bring faster payments into the equation, right? And let's go speak to UPI as a potential infrastructure provider. Not suggesting that they'll dominate 100% of the market, but they could be dominant players 30-40%, because some of the players in some of the markets, because there's a lot of consolidation going on, right? Even in payments as we talk. But in any case, it's just a thought that crossed my mind, because it's a question that does come up in a number of conversations when we have with especially telcos who want to get into payments, right? And their logic is, what is the underlying technology platform do we build this on, right? Do we go with the classic sort of four-party system and then work with providers there, or should we be going and speaking to guys like yours?
See, we are a purpose-driven organization, and we are committed. NPCI International, we are committed to digital public good of the world, and we feel, given this purpose, we feel that it's important to work with central bank or central bank authorized entity for the platform, like fast payment platform like UPI, to kind of flourish and achieve the real results. So our model is to work with central banks or central bank authorized entities, and like I said, there is a reason for it. And we are kind of pursuing that model.
No, fair enough. I get that. So, cognizant of time, I know you have to get on another call. Last question. I know you've shared a lot about what you're trying to achieve. It's incredible. You have relationships at Peru and UAE, and you also have conversations going on the east of India, if I may say, so eastwards, right? And I think part of Nexus is, I think you've been doing something with Singapore too, in terms of interoperability and stuff. Next few years, how do you see NPCI International look? So what's the vision, 2 to 3 years from now? Where do you see NPCI International in terms of the global presence you guys will have?
So I think, like I said, two areas that we are focusing on: infrastructure and interoperability. We would like to see our products, our solutions, being ready and operational in different markets that we go, serving the domestic, use cases. And once they are ready and thriving, we would like to explore connecting them to India to support cross-border flows between those markets and India. On the interoperability side, we are live in 7 markets. We hope to, drive significant amount of scale in these partnerships, and also, pursue other markets that are of relevance, because, if you see, if you read any report, be it I think last few months, if you see a report from Economist or Forbes, all are talking about the tourism potential that is associated with Indians, and it is also reflecting in the aircrafts that have been ordered by some of the leading air carriers here from India. The number of airports that we had has actually multiplied in last 10 years. We have, I think, about 140 plus airports with commercial flights now. So more and more, with growing economy, more disposable income, Indians are traveling more. And I think the article that I read from Economist said that Indians actually plan their vacation 30 days in advance. So with 30 days in advance, I think the travel is more in the region, Southeast Asia, GCC and all. So we are focused on building strong relationships with these markets so that when Indians travel, they're able to scan and pay confidently. And so this will add value to these markets, to small businesses there. And this will, gratify all of us sitting here at NPCI International that, we are creating these connections that people are using, and it'll make us happy and proud.
No, I think it's true. I for firm believe India is now one of the top sort of fintech hubs in the world, right? And I think UPI, and I think both Dilip and you should be very proud of it. I think it's the poster child internationally in terms of recognizing, I guess, India's fintech soft power, if I may use that word, right? And I think the more you are able to spread, I think you will create an environment where a number of other fintechs, right, can actually kind of sort of ride on your coattails into these foreign countries and really bring Indian fintech to the international markets. Because I think what I love about every time I come to India and I meet all the fintech founders out there is you guys are building deep tech, right? You're solving real problems and you're solving them at scale, right? And I think that combination of those three things is what I guess everywhere else we need in the world. I have nothing against BNPL players. The next BNPL player is as good as any other, but I think we have significant challenges in every part of the world, right? I think we're underserved even in the most served parts of the world in some pockets or the other, and I think India is a great example in terms of what you guys are doing. So hats off to you guys. Keep the story going. I'm sure we're going to meet again either later this year at Singapore or maybe you'll be in the UAE. But thank you for making time and coming on the show.
Thank you, Arjun, for the opportunity. I think this conversation is I really enjoyed our conversation, and it was amazing talking about UPI and what we are looking at at a global stage. I'd like to close by saying one remark, and it's a remark from in Sanskrit, which means Vasudev Kutumbakam, which means the whole world is one family. And at NPCI International, we are all about sharing and caring, and we want to enable other networks. You called UPI poster child. I'm so grateful to you for that. But we truly believe in empowering other countries based on our knowledge, our technology, and helping others, solve for the problems that their countries face. So thank you again for the opportunity, Arjun. Lovely catching up, and have a good day.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ritesh Shukla, who is the CEO of NPCI International. I guess for those of you who are living under the rock and have not heard of the UPI, you've obviously been given a good briefing on it. I think you should follow NPCI. You should follow UPI. I think it's an incredible story of success which has come out of India at a global level. So with that, I'll say goodbye and see you guys next week. Take care.